hello everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi Facebook Live every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. I am your host, Dan Z. Excited to be with you to have a cup of coffee, tea, or any hot beverage of your choosing. Well, maybe you want a cold beverage. I don't know. Depends on what the weather is like in your area, most likely. But it's great to see everybody. Oh, Ian, cool. Let me get to some comments right away. We've got some great comments from people. Ian says, "Wowza, this is my first time really seeing Dan's studio. Impressive, most impressive." Well, thank you, Ian. It's a labor of love for sure. It's taken a long time to get it like this. And luckily I have my secret weapon, which is my lovely wife, Deanna, who helps to make it look really, really nice. I supply the supplies and she takes care of making it look good. Blake, hello. Tyler, where does he get those wonderful toys? Nice callback to the original Batman. Hey, Jim, good to chat with you. LJ, hello, buddy. Good to see you. Mary, hello. All my people are here, so it's great to have all of you on Coffee with Kenobi again every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. So let's just address the white bantha in the room, the white elephant in the room. That is what we found out today officially, which is the fact that celebrations, Star Wars Celebration Anaheim, will not be happening in 2020. Now, this is probably not much of a surprise for most of us. And while it is disappointing, of course, because we want to be together, let's be honest, this is probably isn't the right time or the safest time to do something like that. And when you think about all the celebrations of the past, the lead up is almost as exciting, almost. There's about 10, 11 months of announcements every week and guests showing up and different panels and previews of merchandising and all that kind of stuff. And we haven't had any of that ever, not one time. So part of that was already sort of taken away. People from across the pond overseas, like my good friend James Burns from Jedi News or Mark Newbold from Fantha Tracks, they probably wouldn't have been able to come. So now, since it's going to happen in 2022, now there's much more of a chance to do that. Now, on this week's Coffee with Kenobi podcast, we're going to get into much more detail about that. But I just wanted to address it right off the top because it's a big deal. Celebration is a huge thing. We know that next year will be the D23 Expo, also in Anaheim. And then in 2022, when Celebration comes back, it will be at the Anaheim Convention Center as well. So there's going to be opportunities for stuff. And certainly Rancho Obi-Wan has a wonderful gala. And they're not going to have one this year, but they'll probably have one next year, I hope. So we'll see. There are going to be opportunities. In the meantime, there's a lot of great ideas happening. And certainly, if there's anything major happening, Coffee with Kenobi will be sure to bring you that excitement. LJ has a solution, however. He says we should all just hang out at Dan's house in August now. Well, there you go. Dean and I love guests. So that's great. We'll set up a Coffee with Kenobi celebration. There you go. Or Star Wars Reads Day, Star Wars STEM into Star Wars Now, as my son Mason pointed out earlier today. That's still going to happen at the school where we work at, so that's going to be fun too. Yes, CWK celebration. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be fun? All right, very good. So if you have comments or questions about celebration, certainly let me know now or in the Ask Dan Z segment, or send me an email or an MP3, and I'll be happy to play that or read that on this week's podcast so we can discuss it. All right, and Mita says count me in too. Very good. Very, very good. Okay, so this week we've got a lot of great stuff. We've got, let's go back to the opening. When I was getting ready for the show today, I spent probably an hour just looking at chapter 4, and I thought, this is a lot. This is just a lot for people to expect people to do in the summertime. And I don't want it to be rushed, right? An inch wide and a mile deep. That's how we prefer to analyze things on Coffee with Kenobi. So if we really pour into each chapter one episode at a time, one chapter at a time, I think there's more opportunity to really discuss the nuance and the interesting things that happen in this novel. So that's the deal. So that's what we're going to do. So if you already read chapter 5, you're just going to be extra prepared for next week. Very good. So we got some names coming in. Ross says CWK Caftina. Ooh, nice. I like it, Ross. Very good. Brian, good to see you, Brian. He says, first official Coffee with Kenobi lightsaber duel in the backyard. That sounds awesome, Brian. I don't know if it'll be the first official one, though. Mason and I have had a lot of epic lightsaber duels, but this will be the first Coffee with Kenobi sanctioned one. The other times was just recreational excitement at the Zare household. But either way, very good stuff. So, speaking of lightsaber duels, the top 5 this week is your top 5 favorite lightsaber hilts. So, let's jump into that one right now. This is going to be fun. As with all these lists, they're always tricky to come up with sort of how you want to rank them, what to include, what to keep out, and it's tricky. I am a huge fan of lightsabers, and especially lightsaber hilts. I've always loved them. I have many of the master replica 0.45 scales. I have a couple of 1/1 scales. Of course, I built a lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge. I have a lot of, as I said, the bigger master replica ones. We've had plastic ones forever. I had the original Kenner one that had like the balloon, not really a balloon, but an inflatable that you attach to it, and it was yellow. I wish I still had that, by the way. So if anybody has one lying around the house that's extra and they want to mail it to me, that would be great. In all seriousness, though, I've always loved lightsabers, the sounds, the effects, the epic choreography, all that great stuff. So it was extremely hard when Mason and I made our list today of top 5s to know what we want to do. So I did my best. There are a lot of honorable mentions. So we'll just start them out now. So my number 5, let me make sure that I've got this right. Yep, my number 5 is Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber from episode 3 and then later episode 4. This is, if you watch the intro to Coffee with Kenobi's Facebook Live, you'll see a lamp on my desk. And that lamp is actually the lightsaber hilt for Obi-Wan, this lightsaber. I think it's beautiful. It's classic. It's one of the first ones we saw. I mean, Luke's technically is the first one that we saw. But I just think it's a great piece of craftsmanship. I like that Luke Skywalker's in Return of the Jedi kind of has a bit of a homage to that. It's very similar to Obi-Wan's, and since Obi-Wan was a mentor, that was a good choice. So we've got our CWK family chiming in. Minta says, the Inquisitor's lightsaber hilt, the design is quite unique and catches your attention. Yes, it sure does, and has that spinning aspect of it as well. Very, very good. LJ says, Dooku, the curved hilt just added a touch of elegance to the blade, perfectly fitting Dooku's personality. Nice and very well said. Tyler says, Gerald Tapa / Cal Kestis. At first I thought it comedically oversized, but it wound up growing on me. I have the Ultra Sabers version with a green blade and it's really awesome. Oh, cool, Tyler. I'd love to see that. You should post that. Daniel says number 5 is Ventress. Very good choice. Blake says Yoda's hilt. Seeing him firing that cool tiny hilt around, flinging that cool tiny hilt around was so satisfying. And Jim says, my number 5 is the lightsaber my sister and I made for my 4-year-old nephew at Galaxy's Edge. It's a Darksaber because Vader is his favorite. Good. Jeff says Ezra's blast hilt. Very good. Now Mason, his top 5, he put in Yoda as his number 5. So the same as you, Blake. Yoda's is classic. It's smaller. It's got a really, really cool design. And it's just neat to think of Yoda as having a lightsaber hilt anyway. Eric says Darth Sidious's lightsaber is beautifully designed, beautiful despite the evil hand holding it. I agree. I have the 1/1 scale of the Yoda and Darth Sidious's because I think they're cool and smaller. Mary says the Inquisitors as well. Now, remember when in the season 2 finale of Star Wars Rebels, Twilight of the Apprentice, when one of the Inquisitors had a lightsaber that actually flew, allowed the wielder to fly? A lot of people got really upset about that, but that was kind of fun. Brian says XR Coons double bladed. Oh, nice. Nice choice. Very, very good. These are good. They're hard to come up with though, aren't they? But there's a lot of great ones. All right, so my number 4 is Cain and Gerace's. I love Kanan's. I love that he had to put it together for that epic ending to the premiere episode of Star Wars Rebels, the very first episode. Just got a very unique design. It's a little classic. I like that it's got an extended front to it. It's just very unique. I remember when we took Mason there when he was younger, when he was 3, I believe. That was kind of the one that we were looking for that inspired us. Of course, we ended up buying Ezra's, but it's a great one. It's just really, really slick. If they ever make one of these for Galaxy's Edge, one of the Legacy lightsabers, I will definitely buy one of those. I just love the uniqueness of it and the fact that they're continually able to create these things, but then also make them look unique too, because that gets harder with there's so many of them out there. The helicopter saber, that's correct. Yes, Eric, good job. Good call. Tyler says Obi-Wan's in the Phantom Menace / Attack of the Clones. The New Hope one is iconic, but I love the early design. Is one of the first plastic sabers I ever got. Very good. And I think the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are a little bit different. I could be wrong, but I think they're a little bit different. Jim says my number 4 is Cal Kestis' saber. You know, I can't off the top of my head remember what Cal's looks like, so I'm gonna have to relook that one up. LJ says Rebels era Maul. Oh, interesting. I really like the piece together look of his double-bladed hilt, with one piece being from an old Inquisitor lightsaber. Yep, very good. Yeah, Maul's is he's basically got 3 lightsabers that we've seen, and that Rebels one is pretty cool. That very long kind of, it's not a like a blade like Dooku's, but it's kind of got the similar idea. Blake says Vader's saber. No particular reason why. I just think it's cool. Yeah, it's classic. It's iconic. I almost had it on there too. It's a good one. Eric says Rey's saber she made from her staff. You know, I do love that one. I didn't put on my list, but I really like that one. Mary says the Jedi Temple Guard. Another great choice. Minta says Maul's hilt from the Rebels series. Another call for Maul's hilt from Rebels. And Daniel says Dooku's number 4. Mason has Ponkrell's. He has 2 double-bladed lightsabers, and of course he's in that 4-episode arc of the Clone Wars. And we never heard back from him besides that 4-part arc. But that one left an impression, and I believe, if memory serves, that's the first canonical double-bladed lightsaber. And Ponkrell had 2 of those. So again, that was Mason's number 4. All right, I love it. So number 3 for me could have easily been number 1, and that is Count Dooku's. We've already heard about Count Dooku's. From the moment I saw this one, I was intrigued by it. At first I thought, well, that's a little odd, but it instantly became very classic, and as LJ had said earlier, it's got a sort of elegant, sophisticated, it's almost got a pretentious look about it, which I love because Count Dooku is very pretentious and very full of himself. And this lightsaber very much has the styling so that the front of that looks like it could, if you put it the wrong way, it could poke you and injure you. And the fact that it's curved is interesting, and I think it's fascinating. Tyler says Ponkrell is the Umbridge of Star Wars. Well, that's an interesting observation. I like it. So anyway, Dooku is my number 3. Could have easily been number 1. I always really liked the look and design because it's so unique. And of course, Asajj Ventress has one that's similar to it, but that's because she was inspired by her master. Very good. All right, what is it? Number 3 for other people. Jim says Ahsoka's Clone Wars lightsabers. Cool. I'm assuming, yeah, lightsabers, so that would be plural, so that would be 2. Yeah, and especially when I watched the last couple episodes of the Clone Wars, I was extra sad that Ahsoka didn't have those anymore because they kind of grew on me quite a bit as well. Mary says Luke's in episode 6. The classic green, again with that hilt that looks similar to Obi-Wan's, is a great one, a really great one. Ian says Dooku's is great, totally unique. Yeah, I agree, man. It's super cool. Tyler says Anakin's from Attack of the Clones. I really like how Vader it is in design. I wish it got more screen time. You know, when I was looking at these, I was again reminded of that too, how close it resembles his Vader lightsaber, which is cool. Minta says Obi-Wan's hilt. Yeah, Obi-Wan's hilt is great. I mean, Minta, did you mean the one that I talked about earlier, or his one from episodes 1 and 2? Because they're all a little bit different, but they're all really, really great. Eric says Dooku's 3 for me also, or 2. Love the classic design, very elegant, like Dooku's fighting style. Oh, good call. LJ says Ventress, dual curved blades, but she was able to attach them to make a staff. It was a very cool feature that I don't think they use enough in later seasons of Clone Wars. I agree. I like that one too. Blake says Kylo Ren's crossguard hilt. The vents on the side he could use as a weapon, and the crude look to it made it awesome. I agree with that very much. Brian says Kiadi Mundi's. Yeah, his is cool too. Again, I think I believe there's a book coming out later in the year that's going to look at all these different lightsaber hilts. I'm very much looking forward to that because there are just a lot of things to like, a lot of different things to choose from on that one. Mason's number 3 was Sivaji Oppresses double lightsaber, and that one is sharp too. It seems kind of very powerful and a little more bulky, kind of like Sivaji Oppress. I'm sure that's not an accident because Dave Filoni is quite the genius when it comes to storytelling. But Sivaji Oppress's sort of mirrors the power in the bulk of Sivaji Oppress himself after he gets involved, or through no fault of his own, or through intent of his own, through the interference with the Night Sisters and from Maul himself. All right, very good. So now let's move on to number 2. My number 2 again. I almost made this number 1 just because it's so iconic, and of course, it's Anakin's / Luke's / Rey's. It ends up being buried on Tatooine along with Leia's lightsaber, which, by the way, I also kind of wrestled with what to put on. LJ says Mason's list is legit. I know, I'm so proud of him. He picked out a lot of deep cuts and unique lightsabers that not a lot of people would know about. So his learning is complete. Now he's the master, right? Very good. Eric says, who had the saber that connected the 2 handles and became a double blades lightsaber? Well, it could be one of the ones we mentioned earlier, Eric, I would say. It could be Ponkrell's, it could be Maul's from the end of the Clone Wars. There are certainly a lot of options there for sure. Minta says the Darksaber Hilt, it has a unique history with the Jedi as well as the Mandalorians. It does, and that sound. We could do top 5 lightsaber emitter sounds. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff there too. Ian says, for real, he really knows his sabers. Yes, and Mason, they're talking about you, buddy. How well you know these lightsabers. Super cool, man. Tyler says, Ben Solo, as much as I like the Kylo version, the Ben one sticks out much more to its simplicity and unique ignition noise. I have the Galaxy's Edge version, and it really makes me feel like I have a real lightsaber. Oh, that's cool. I'd love to see that, Tyler. I saw pictures of it, but when last time I was at Galaxy's Edge, they hadn't made it yet. LJ's 2 is Luke's Return of the Jedi lightsaber. The first time he ignited the green on the skiff blew my 6-year-old mind. Yeah, iconic moment. Mary says Rey's staff saber, also awesome. Jim's number 3 is the Darksaber Hilt because it has such close resemblance to the traditional samurai sword hilt. Very true. Eric says his number 2 for Vader is classic. Mason's number 2, since he's kind of stealing the show here, which I'm very proud of, by the way, is Darth Maul's The Phantom Menace. I mean, that, talk about iconic, the first time we ever saw a double-bladed lightsaber. It's just a perfect mirror of both sides, of course, both red. Then when it's cut in half, it still operates very powerfully as well. And we see half of that one in the Clone Wars, so that's great. Back to my number 2. Again, Anakin / Luke / Rey. It's the greatest, right? I mean, it's not my number 1, but although it easily could be. I've got the 1/1 scale of it as a master replica. I've got the actual just hilt itself. I've got a miniature version of it, and I love it. And in fact, I hated to see it ripped apart, and I know that, and we'll talk about this in the book study, I know that it was fixed by Rey, thanks to some instructions from Luke and her basic skill with repairing things anyway. But that's one that I think is extremely important. It's the first one we've ever seen, and it's just got such a wonderful design. And if you know about the history of the original Star Wars, how they came up with the design of that one, it's pretty fun, for sure. Okay, time for my number 1. I always want to ask people what their guess is, what my number 1 is. But my number 1 is Kylo Ren's. I found a great picture of what his lightsaber looks like as Ben Solo, which is obviously on the left, at least how I'm looking at it. And then on the right is what it looks like once he becomes Kylo Ren. So if you've read The Rise of Kylo Ren Marvel comic, you know that he takes his blade, and then he takes other parts of lightsabers from people that he has faced, and he uses that and creates a new blade. And it's just great. I do have the legacy lightsaber version of it from Galaxy's Edge, and it's just a thing of beauty. It's a little bit heavier. It's so cool and dark and sort of elegant in a macabre way, which is great. David, hello, good to see you, buddy. How's life treating you these days? Awesome to see you. Blake says number 2 is Maul. Aminta's number 1 is Ahsoka's lightsaber hilts from Rebels. No surprise there. No surprise there at all. At least you are consistent, Minta, which we certainly appreciate. And they do sell those at Galaxy's Edge, and I know Ashley Eckstein actually purchased them, and she was excited to do so. Eric says number 1 is Luke's from Jedi. Jim's number 1 is Obi-Wan's Revenge of the Sith lightsaber hilt. Tyler says Luke's from Return of the Jedi. The coolest of all lightsabers, the sound it makes when it turns on, the green blade, my favorite color, and the Obi-Wan style hilt. I've got the old Master Replicas Force FX version. It's still one of my favorite Star Wars collectibles. Well, Tyler, sounds like you and I have very, very similar tastes in collecting, which is cool. Blake also says Luke's from A New Hope. Oh, from A New Hope, not The Last Jedi, or The Return of the Jedi. Blake says, first one we ever get to see on screen. Exactly. LJ says a legacy saber, Anakin, Luke, Rey, classic design. It's the first lightsaber most of us saw. Yep, like I said, because easily been my number one. Mary's number one is Ahsoka's in season 7 after Anakin improves them. Oh, interesting. And does everyone remember how we all freaked out when we first saw the first teaser trailer for The Force Awakens and being ignited? And I'm assuming most likely that Ian is talking about when the Phantom Menace trailer, still to me the greatest trailer ever made. When we first saw that ignited, that did blow me away. I'm like, oh, who's this bad guy? He's got a two-sided red lightsaber. Yikes! That was really, really powerful. Did I finally get a haircut? No, in fact, it's really getting long and it's kind of crazy, actually, Eric. So no, I did not get a haircut. That's for sure. Mason's number one. Are you ready for this, everybody? Is the Jedi Temple Guard lightsaber hilt. A really, really cool one. He's definitely salivating over the legacy version at Galaxy's Edge someday. But again, a very unique, elegant design. First time we saw yellow blades that were canonical. So that was super fun to check out as well. So there we go. My number one is Kylo Ren's lightsaber. Not the character, just the hilt itself. So unique. And the fact that they continue to make these things, and the fact that it's kind of got ties to Arthurian legend and legacy, which is very fitting, especially when you consider the end of The Force Awakens, which I've analyzed a few times in different places. Really, really fascinating stuff. All right. So, thank you for everybody for sharing your top 5 lightsaber hilts. I thought that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of great stuff to enjoy about these lightsaber hilts. Honorable mentions, I had Ezra's with the stun blaster from the first season of Rebels, Qui-Gon Jinn's, Luke's green lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. All really, really good ones. I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting about. Gosh, they're just a lot of great ones. A lot of people. I looked up a list online, and someone had Mace Windu's as their very favorite one, as their top one, and I hadn't thought about that one. I've never really been crazy about Mace's hilt. I don't dislike it, but it just doesn't move me like the ones on my list. So yes, Eric says, "Nice job, Mason." Well, thanks, man. I'll be sure to pass along. In fact, I know Mason is watching right now, and I'm proud of him too. It's cool. He did a great job. Tyler said, "My brother was just telling me how bad he wants the Galaxy's Edge Temple Guard saber." Yeah, it's super, super, super cool, man. It really looks cool in the Den of Antiquities. Yeah, it does. It totally does. Tyler says, "Kid Fisto's an honorable mention on mine." Deep Cut Lobaka's wooden hilt. I like that one too. I almost had one of those on there. Brian's number one is Luke's from Return of the Jedi. My favorite scene of all the movies when R2 shoots it across the Sarlacc. It is one of the best scenes in Star Wars and cinema. Great, great fun. All right, I love it. Ian likes Mace's as much for the blade as the hilt. Oh yeah, the purple is very iconic. And I don't think anyone should ever have a purple one besides him. Minta says Plo Koon's hilt is an honorable mention. Well, of course you said Plo Koon because of his connection with Ahsoka, which is great. Have you ever met Dave Filoni, Minta? Because you two would definitely be good buddies. I love it. All right, so it's time, ladies and gentlemen, time to go back to class and go to the CWK book study. We are on chapter 4, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Originally, we're going to do 4 and 5, but the amount of time it takes to prepare these, I don't want to rush it. I don't want to skip stuff over. And I also want to include you. I felt like last week was a great start, but I want it to be much more interactive. I don't want it just to be me lecturing and talking. I want it to be the both of us. So I'll throw out some ideas and tell me what you think. Again, we're on chapter 4 of The Rise of Skywalker. Chapter 4 starts on page, let's get to that. I suppose I could have bookmarked it, but that's all right. I have faith that I'll find the page. It starts on page 45, right there. Okay, sorry for the glare. There's a lot of great stuff. When it starts off, we've got Rey, who we learn has been translating these Jedi texts that she got from Ashto, before the tree burned down, thanks to Yoda. But she's been translating the Jedi texts with the help of 3PO, Luke's notes, and then Beaumont, who is an historian who also is working with the Resistance, and he's a Resistance leader now. Beaumont, of course, is played by Dominic, is it Monaghan? Monaghan? Famous for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, of course. But he doesn't have a lot of screen time in it, but it's good. So that's why it's good to get some context with him in this novel itself. I think an interesting thing about when we get this background, and again, anytime thing pops up, feel free to jump in like Mary's doing here. Glad the book expands on Beaumont and the Jedi texts. I agree. I think the Jedi texts are fascinating. Who wouldn't want to pore over those things? Pore over, get it? CWK, pore over. And just to see that everyone is looking at them. One great part about this, both in the movie and in the book itself, is that the emphasis is placed on language. The emphasis is placed on culture and archaeology, really, to a degree, because you're respecting and looking up the past. And then, again, language and communication and teamwork. So and literacy. So there's a lot of cool kind of subtext in this. Interesting thing, though, it says that one of the main reason that Leia wants to be a Jedi is she wants to make them proud. I want to find the exact place. Oh, here we go. At the bottom of 45, it says, if she could embrace, she being Rey, if she could embrace Leia's calm, she was certain the visions would stop altogether. She'd sleep better, train better, become a Jedi to make Leia and Luke, wherever he was, proud of her. So when you hear that, tell me kind of what goes through your mind when you hear the fact that becoming a Jedi, why she wants to be one is to make Luke and Leia proud. What do you think about that? I certainly have some pretty strong feelings about the challenges of that statement. Have you ever had a situation, I guess, in your life where you want to do something because you want to make someone proud? That in and of itself is not a bad thing. But if it's your only motivation, I think you're going to find yourself kind of caught in a rut. Because if you're constantly trying to make someone proud, you really can't control how they feel or don't feel. All you can control is what you're trying to do, what you are trying to accomplish. So the fact that she wants to do that kind of shows to me part of her flaws early on in this novel. She should be doing it because it's something she feels called to do, the right thing to do. Yes, getting outside praise and your mentors to be proud of you is a wonderful thing. There's certainly nothing bad about that. But if that's your main drive, then it's probably not going to be the way to go. So I just think that's interesting. Again, feel free to weigh on this or any of the comments as we're going along tonight. It says Rey. I thought it was interesting that when Finn and Poe come back, she talks specifically about Finn, and it says that it's very hard for her to. I think it says let him leave or his friends leave because she worries about them being injured, worries about them dying, being captured. So I think it's cool that Rey has mastered something that Luke had a hard time with in The Empire Strikes Back, which he clearly failed at. Rey has mastered what Luke couldn't, letting friends fly off and put themselves in danger. Because at some point you have to let go of the fact that you can't control all of that stuff. You have to let your friends and family move on. And yes, there are certainly risks involved. I mean, every parent knows this. Everyone who's ever seen a loved one go away, whether it's to college or anything, really, a new job, a new state, a move, whatever. It's scary to let your friends go because there's risk involved, but you have to let them kind of take their own path. And Rey's able to kind of take a step back and let that happen, which I think is great. Mary says she hasn't been able to fully embrace herself yet, trying to find herself through Luke and Leia. Exactly, Mary. Well said. And that is kind of part of the problem that she faces, for sure. Again, it's not the worst thing, but it's certainly going to keep her from achieving her goals. All right, so the conflict of Rey training versus Rey helping Poe and Finn on page 48, I think is really, really interesting. Before I get to that, though, Minta says, from what I've read, she sees Luke and Leia as her only role models. Her parents were absent her entire life, and she doesn't let her dark visions get in the way of her training, thus letting them down. Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking about it too. I think Leia, and it says in this chapter, Leia thinks of Rey as almost like the daughter she never had. And I think, briefly, which is fitting, she sees Han as sort of like her father figure. I don't think she thinks she sees Luke as a father figure. I think She sees him as someone deeply respected, and I don't know if it's familial or not. It's just not a father figure type, just in my opinion. Eric says Rey has more compassion than any Jedi. That's interesting. I think Ahsoka might give her a run for her money, but Rey is certainly at the top of that list. Ian says, train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Exactly. Exactly. Yoda understood that. He almost understood that too well because he forgot to do some of the emotional connection. But that's something that Rey hasn't forgotten to do. So very good. There's a lot of great stuff with the Jedi you can definitely point to. Okay, so turn your book to page 48 if you have it with you. On the bottom, the conflict of Rey training versus Rey helping Poe and Finn, I think is really kind of interesting. So Rey, this is when they're debating. Poe's angry at Rey. He says, "But you're not," Poe said. "You're training for what?" He took a deep breath as if considering. Rey could see the exact moment he decided to give it to her straight. "You're the best fighter we have. We need you out there, not here." Rey had nothing to say to that. Poe was right. But Leia was right too. Rey needed all the training she could get to face what was to come. She wished there was a way to make both of them happy. So again, the gift of Rey that Rey is and her also her great challenge is that she's trying to please everybody, which she can't do. And I was thinking about this, like, what is the right thing? Should Rey stop training and go and help? I mean, she obviously would help. I mean, Poe does say specifically, "You're the best fighter we've got," and she is. Of course, she is. But if she stays, should I stay or should I go? Someone should write a song about that. Yeah, I feel like that should be a laugh track. Do I have a laugh track here? Let's see. Let's try again. So, should she stay or should she go? Thank you very much. That was much louder than I expected, but still. When she stays and trains, that's great. But I think what Poe is trying to say, and this is my interpretation, is that Rey is training, but she's also kind of hiding from the conflict to a degree. And in a way, she is. She's sort of hiding. She's afraid of these sudden dark side pull that she has. Sort of fear of identity still a little bit, and she's kind of holding back. But she's in a safe spot because she's around Leia. She is training and learning more about the Force, but she's also not out there in the action. And from a selfish point of view, maybe Poe should be like, you know what? She can't do it. She's got to train. There's something greater than what I need right now, and Resistance needs. Rey needs to train to her peak so that she can be ready for whatever is to come through the Force. But Poe's not a Jedi. Poe's got his own journey. So I just like the conflict there between both parties. I think that's interesting. So Beaumont confirms the worst after they get this message. I do need a Salacious B Crumb laugh track, Ross. Very good. I'm about to get one of those and add that there. Nice, nice. Or if you make one, send it my way. I'll plug it in. Either way, I love it. So Beaumont confirms the worst because he's an expert in Sith lore. Because of dark science and cloning, Palpatine is back. I don't really want to delve too deeply into the fact that this is somewhat problematic. It works in the context of the novel. It's almost wrapped up a little too neatly for my sake, and I feel like it should be more complicated than that. I feel like it should be much more mysterious, and that people wouldn't know per se necessarily. So, Beaumont apparently is an expert in Sith lore. That's all it's said about it. We just take it at face value. But to me, that's a part of it that I struggle with a little bit. I think there could be more dots connected, or allow for a little bit of ambiguity there to make it kind of be head scratching. But either way, that's what happens. But if you think that is complicated or tricky, what about this? It says Luke knows about Palpatine being obsessed with living forever and how he used it to tempt Anakin to the dark side. That's on pages 49 and 50. I was shocked by that. I'm going to read that to you. It says, besides, Luke's notes had mentioned that Chief Palpatine had been obsessed with the idea of living forever. He'd claimed to Anakin that he discovered the secret of eternal life from his own master Darth Plagueis right before betraying and killing him. Luke had assumed it was a lie meant to tempt Anakin to the dark side, but what if there was truth to it? Alright, so that's all true. I know that, you know that, because we watched these movies 1,000 times. But how did Luke find out that? I mean, Anakin hears it from Palpatine. From what I have seen and what I know, Anakin didn't tell anybody about this. And then he becomes Darth Vader, and all the Jedi are gone, and he's trapped in this dark armor for 19 years plus when he meets Luke. So how does Luke know that? It must have been revealed through the Force. Maybe Yoda somehow found out through the Force, and maybe through Luke's continual study for years and years, for 30 years, about the Jedi and their history. Maybe he somehow found out that way, but I don't know. I need a little more context here to find out how that was known, because to me that wasn't really public knowledge in the galaxy. If anyone has any theories on that, or has read a comic that I've forgotten about or something, please let me know. Minta says, Poe kind of reminds me of Han from New Hope. He doesn't fully understand how the Force works, which frustrates him. Oh, that's interesting. That's very clever. I like that, Minta. That's a good analysis. Tyler says, I really like that line. Anytime they reference prequels, it makes me happy. I agree. I think that's cool, too. Eric says, from a holocron. Yeah, again, perhaps, but I thought for a holocron you had to record that, so maybe Anakin recorded that. But undoubtedly that would be in a Sith holocron. I don't know. I mean, that would work for sure. Minta says, I believe he wanted to use Anakin as a new vessel once his body broke down. Well, that's an interesting idea. But probably, I mean, of course, you mean before he became Vader. But yeah, I agree. That's an interesting theory. That's a powerful twist, Minta. I like that. In fact, I'm going to comment. Boom! I just liked your comment. There you go. I like that. That's cool. All right. So again, I find that interesting. I'm not going to say problematic officially, but I need to know more. I need to know more about how he came to that conclusion. How much of that is public knowledge? Maybe I need to do some digging on that. The reason, let's see, no one comes at the end of The Last Jedi is on page 54. Well, I know one challenge that people had was at the end of The Last Jedi when Leia puts out that signal on her special code, no one comes to help. And that's a big problem. Real quickly, Eric says, in the Dark Empire comics, the clone emperor lured Luke to the dark side. That's right. That's right. And undoubtedly that may have inspired that. Who knows? That's a cool look. Of course, not canonical, as Eric knows, but it's interesting. Ian says, did Luke communicate with his dad as a Force ghost after the events of Return of the Jedi? Well, that's what I'm wondering, Ian. Maybe he did. I don't know that Anakin knew that, but he did come back as a Force ghost, so he undoubtedly figured out something. I mean, he is the chosen one, so to me that makes some sense. So that's pretty major too. I mean, talk about a whopper of a story right there. There's still so much story to be told that I think deserves to be told. Let's get back to this a little bit. The reason no one could come at the end of The Last Jedi. Okay, so here's what the novel provides. And by the way, this is covered in Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Roanhorse. But in the novel it says, top of 54, last time we sent for help, no one came, said Leia. No one answered the call. Even as she said the word, she had to concede to herself that it wasn't that simple. Thanks to some risky assignments led by Poe, Rey, Finn, and Snap, they learned that the First Order had been doggedly pursuing their sympathizers, restricting communications, cutting off supply lines, capturing or even assassinating allies. In short, no one had answered the call because very few had even heard it, or they were scared to hear it. So it makes sense that people didn't. Also, it kind of shows how bad things were. But they spend a year, and again, Resistance Reborn goes over this, kind of getting those supply lines back and getting Maz Kanata to team up with the Resistance sure opens up a lot of communication as well. So this was a nice extra thing added that I liked. Rey and Maz's convo. At the end, Maz Kanata tells Rey that she has to trust in the Force. Maz Kanata has this great thing in this chapter, both with a conversation with Leia and with Rey. Easy for me to say that she basically, it always says that she's very gentle but very forceful, kind of in the same breath. Let's see if I can find an exact impression or an exact sentence here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. There is no one else, Maz said, somehow managing to sound gentle and firm at the same time. Yeah, that's a much better explanation. She's very insistent and direct, very insistent and direct. But it's the way, it's not the matter, it's the manner. It's the way you deliver that message, and no one does it like Maz Kanata. Tyler says those extra scenes with Maz are a great treat. I agree. And undoubtedly, if Carrie were still with us, we would get to have seen those on film. But they really add a lot. I think, to the legacy of this, and to, I think, Maz's deep connection with Leia, I think, is cool because the mutual respect and admiration there is very, very strong. Let's see. On page 57, loneliness was a kind of agony, but belonging was another. So turn your book to page 57. This is about Rey. This is after Rey figures out that she is going to Exegol for sure, but her friends are going with her. Knowing something in her head was different from knowing it in her heart. Rey had understood on some level that she wasn't alone anymore, but now she knew it, and knew is in italics. And it was so wonderful it hurt. Tears filled her eyes. Loneliness was a kind of agony, but belonging was another. Isn't that interesting? You know, let go of what you fear to lose, as was just mentioned earlier. There is some vulnerability that Rey shows here that I think is important. She doesn't want to be alone. She's afraid of losing her friends, but she feels like in her heart that she knows she's got part of a family. So even though she thinks she should go by herself, she goes with everybody. Now, Luke always did these big, epic Jedi things by himself. Rey's not doing that, and it doesn't get much more epic than facing down the Emperor who's come back from the dead. So another example of the awesomeness that is Rey. Eric wants a Maz Disney Plus series. That would be great. Mary says exactly what I was thinking. Maz gives a lot of the same wisdom as Yoda, which Minta said earlier. Maz is basically a female Yoda. It's true, isn't it, to a degree? Just there's a lot of wisdom and power in diminutive form, which I really like. All right, the effect of the Last Jedi on Leia on page 59. We do find out. Let me get the exact line for you. Let's see. It says that. Oh, basically, it is Leia says, you know, I had to use the Force. Here it is. Leia sighed. Being blown off the bridge of the Radis into the vacuum of space had taken a toll. She had saved herself that day through the power of the Force, but her body had paid a steep price. And I think that's cool because not that Leia is on the verge of death, but I think it's important that, yes, she did use the Force in a very beautiful scene in The Last Jedi. And even though she survived and lived for, you know, over a year after that, it still takes its toll on her. She's not immortal. If you use the Force and you're immortal, I mean, even Palpatine tries to make a claim for that, but obviously he isn't. The duress and chemicals and all the stuff it takes for him to try to stay alive somehow, and it seems to be very pain-ridden. So there's no such thing. So the fact that Leia is vulnerable, I think, is really, really good. Ian says, you pick up some wisdom after a few hundred years. That's true. That's very true. Minta says, Rey wasn't used to having others care for her. It's out of the norm for her. Exactly. So, and out of the norm is scary. I mean, because you're not used to it, and you don't know how to process it, and there's that fear of losing it, which makes sense. Again, very, very human and very relatable. On page 61, we talk about what's at stake. It's pretty powerful stuff. This is when Maz and Leia have this great conversation. If she finds Exegol, Maz says, she may just survive. Like Leia, Maz occasionally caught glimpses of people and places, presents and futures through the power of the Force. Like Leia, she rarely understood what that meant. But if she doesn't, Maz added, the galaxy will surely not. Okay, so that's like, wow, that's pretty heavy stuff, man. Because you're saying, okay, this is a great responsibility, you know, it's her job. But by the way, she doesn't, the galaxy isn't going to survive. And she just says it matter-of-factly. That seems like a lot of pressure, but it's also very, very honest. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Lou Piniella, old Cubs manager and Cincinnati Reds manager, and he said, pressure is for people who aren't prepared. So Rey has to decide, is she prepared or not? Minta says, considering Leia hardly used the Force, it was bound to take a massive toll on her eventually. Exactly. Exactly. All right, so that's going to do it for the book study. That was chapter 4. Again, we're just going to do one chapter at a time. And this took a little bit less time to do, which is a good thing. So next week, we're going to look at chapter 5 of the Rise of Skywalker. This is going to take a lot longer, but I'm okay with that. Again, the philosophy I have as an educator is go an inch wide, but a mile deep. You know, really kind of dive deeply into this, and I think there's much more to explore. As we continue to do this, please chime in with what we've been talking about. Maybe there's something in Chapter 4 that I missed. Please point it out. I'd be happy to discuss it right here. This sequence is only as, I think, informed and strong as your interaction. So thank you all so much for your feedback, because I think it just is much more interesting and much more like a real class. Mary says, one of my favorite lines in the sequel trilogy, never be afraid of who you are. I love that one too. And, a perfect sort of struggle that Rey had through a lot of The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens too. All right, so time to ask Dan Z as we're wrapping up the show. Tyler, this is very kind. He says, this really makes me wish I went to high school at your school. Tyler, I'd love to have you, man. It's very, very kind of you. I love being a teacher. I certainly missed it during remote learning, although it was still very powerful, and I was able to make some connections, I hope, or hopefully some learning went on with my students. You do your best, you put it out there, but this is a nice way for us to kind of, it sort of stimulates that side of my brain that likes the educational aspects of being a teacher, the communication, the feedback, the rhetoric, the discussion, the analysis. It's great. And it's also obviously what inspired Coffee with Kenobi, that style of education. So thank you, Tyler, for that. It's very, very kind. So any questions about Chapter 4? Any feedback or questions or comments about the news of Celebration? Or how about the trailer today for the new Star Wars video game, Star Wars Squadrons? What do people think about that? Something that stood out to me is the Trandoshan Rebel pilot. That was a pretty cool thing to see. We saw Hera. We saw a lot of cool stuff. I know Mason and I were wishing it was a little more on the ground stuff, because for me at least, the flight stuff. Oh look, speaking of, yes, Star Wars Squadrons. Blake, yep, I sure did. Talking about that right now, my friend. It looks cool. What did you think about it, Blake? And what did all of you think about it too? There's some great stuff coming, of course, from Star Wars, and now with a big gap. I guess big gap, 2 years until the next Star Wars Celebration. Over 700 days until Star Wars Celebration. And no movies in sight. We've got The Mandalorian season 2, and season 3 we know is a go. It hasn't started filming that yet. But we're gonna have a couple of years, and it's up to us to keep the Star Wars flames going. So that's pretty good. Eric says Squadron looks great. I might have to get a console. Yeah, I think so, man. And is it gonna be? What I guess it's gonna be on PlayStation 4 and Xbox, because the new PlayStation isn't coming out just yet. Minta says new Squadron game looks amazing, and Tyler says the Squadron game looks great. I really hope you can fly the Ghost. Ooh, that would be cool. Daniel says not into gaming but looks great. Yeah, Daniel, that's fair. And Star Wars Battlefront has a pretty unique story to it. We haven't finished the actual mission itself, and we just kind of been barely scratching the surface of it, but we got into it more recently. But I know you can watch a lot of YouTube versions of it that just shows all the animated stuff, all the kind of the cut scenes that kind of film its own sort of movie as well, and that's pretty cool. Mary says, do you think there will be major Star Wars announcements at D23 Expo next year? I do. And Clayton Sandell of ABC News tweeted that today. He said that he thought that would be the case, and that would make sense. The D23 Expo will be a year from this August, and it's a great time. I went last year. I got to do a lot of really cool stuff. I certainly would like to go next year. We'll see how the schedule goes out. But yes, Mary, I do think that we'll get some D23 Expo announcements because of D23 Star Wars related. I do think that. I sure do. Blake says, I think it looks cool, but really just want Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. I'm more excited about the Lego one than anything, really. Minta says, my oldest nephew loves The Mandalorian. Such a proud aunt. Yep, the Mandalorian is great. I still, before a new one comes out, I'm going to see if Deanna wants to watch it. She had mentioned to me a few months ago that she thought she might want to see it because of the child, so that would be great. Tyler says, I'm hoping to get to see some Star Wars Black Series San Diego Comic-Con exclusives soon. It's rumored there's going to be a Clone Trooper 4-pack. Ooh, now that would be cool. I'm sure my son Mason will be all over that too. Hoping, Hasbro's really good about communicating with fan sites and podcasts and blogs about what's coming. So as soon as I find out, I will certainly let everybody know for sure. Will Celebration move to 2022 to not conflict with D23 next year, maybe? Well, that makes sense to me, Blake. It certainly makes sense to me. Unless you have to consider, where's the availability for a conference of that size that has access to hotels and other things going on, and what else has already been scheduled on the books too. So that makes sense to me, Blake. I think that's a pretty smart observation, because D23 is every 2 years. I don't know what the celebration schedule is. There's really hasn't been a consistent one. I mean, it's every other 2 years, every 3 years. It's varied throughout history, so I don't know, but that would be my guess. Tyler says Hasbro's having a Marvel Legends live stream tomorrow, so I'm hoping Star Wars is later this week. Ooh, interesting. Again, I haven't heard yet, but that would be great. That would be great. Ian says, I hope Dan and Tom's wish comes true for a Bad Batch Black Series pack. Ian, that would be awesome. If that was the case, I would be even more excited. I would love to get figures of the Bad Batch for sure. Oh, awesome, everybody. Well, this has been wonderful, as always, chatting with each and every one of you. Be sure to join us next Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. This weekend, of course, is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. You make a difference, so thank you for what you do in influencing your children. It makes a big difference, not only in what you say, but how you act and how you carry yourself. So thank you for making this galaxy a better place. Next week, our top 5. I had a couple of ideas for this. I think it actually might be kind of fun. We've done top 5 Stormtrooper designs. We've done top 5 of Clone Troopers, but we haven't done a top 5 of Stormtrooper armor from the sequel trilogy era. So from The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, plus Star Wars Resistance. How about a top 5 Stormtrooper armor designs from the era of the Resistance and the First Order? So that's going to be what we'll do. So be sure to prepare that. Tyler lets us know that Record's going to have a Funko Pop soon. Well, that's cool. I didn't know that. Jeff says, thanks, Dan. Happy Father's Day to you as well. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Ian says, happy Father's Day to all the CWK dads out there. I like that. Yes, absolutely, Ian, for sure, man. Mary says, thanks, Dan. Everybody have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the dads. And Ross says, thanks, Dan. Have a great week. May the Force be with you. Well, thanks so much. And while you can't get it for Father's Day, be sure to pre-order the Star Wars book if you haven't done so already, written by myself, Pablo Hidalgo, and Cole Horton, available October 20th. Wow. 4 months away from the release of this book. Oh, boy. And I've heard some stuff about it recently from my editor that's very exciting, so I cannot wait. Eric suggests top 5 bounty hunters. That's a good idea. We'll do that in the future for sure. But so Eric, remind me of that if I forget. But definitely what we'll do this for the next one is to do our top 5 Stormtrooper armor designs from the era of The Force Awakens, the prequel era, I guess I should say. Let me turn this music down a little bit. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me each and every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, I have been your host, Dan Z. You can find me each and every week on Coffee with Kenobi, wherever you find podcasts. You can certainly subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We've got a huge Pinterest for sure. And don't forget that, again, we have our STEM into Star Wars: The Time Gross runs at Washington Community High School that I will be at, and Corey as well. It's great fun. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for do some cool Star Wars things, and when there are, I will be sure to let you know. Tyler, thanks, Dan, everyone. This always makes my money, and on a good note. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Blake says, no celebration, but these communities, meetups online are a good way to keep us going. I agree, yeah. And just like every Monday night doing this is fun and kind of a celebration thing, because we've got our community here, and it's great, great stuff. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Meantime, may the Force be with you as well. Until next time, get those top 5s ready for your favorite Stormtrooper armor designs from the sequel trilogy. Chapter 5 of The Rise of Skywalker for our book study. And remember, this is the podcast you are looking for.